This KSP mod is a complete game changer. Collidable terrain scatter, good-looking trees and foliage on Kerbin, and others, unique surface features to make you want to explore every single planet and moon. Hello everyone, Karnasa here, and in today's video I'll be taking a look at the new KSP Parallax 2.0 update. And what better way of exploring some of the new features than sending Jeb, Bill and Bob to the Munar surface on an Apollo-style moon mission. Whilst the mission is going ahead, I'm going to talk a little bit about this update and a few things I'm excited for. After, I'll be going over each planet and moon in the stock game to showcase some of the new terrain you can expect from the mod. That will be at 9 minutes and 40 seconds. But now, let's talk a little about the mod itself. I can't start off this video without of course mentioning the creator, Gameslinx, known for planet packs such as After Kerbin and Beyond Home, creating the original KSP Parallax mod, and also a content creator here on YouTube, with videos such as Kerbal Space Program, but Kerbin is flat. Definitely go check them out, there'll be a link to their channel in the description, as well of course a link to the download page for the new Parallax update. I do believe there were a few issues with the mod on CCAN when it first released earlier this week, but as far as I'm aware, those have now been resolved and the mod should also be available on CCAN. I have been following the progress of the new Parallax update for a while now, with Link sending me a few screenshots of the mod a few months ago, and I have to say, all expectations have been exceeded. Whilst making this video, I was almost considering calling it "Who even needs KSP 2? Seriously, with some of the upcoming graphical mods, namely Blackrock's volumetric cloud update for Scatterer and the ones currently released, this game is looking better than ever, as hopefully it is showcased by this mission in the background. The graphics mods I'm using for this video will be listed in the description, but for the most part it's Parallax, Scatterer, Eve stock planet configs, Planetshine, distant object enhancement, and TUFX using Ballistic Fox's experimental lukewarm config. All of these can be found on CCAN. But speaking of Ballistic Fox, I'm sure one question that is on everyone's lips, and regular viewers of this channel will know me as someone that quite likes to dabble in different planet packs. Will this new Parallax update be available for systems other than the Kerbal system? The short answer is hopefully yes. As of the date of recording this video, Parallax 2.0 only has configs to model the Kerbal system. However, Lynx has stated that Parallax will work with planet mods that support it. And going back to Ballistic Fox, I have been made aware they are going to attempt to create configs for the new update for both Kerbal scale Real Solar System and Real Solar System itself. Another content creator, Entropian, also go check out their channel, they do some crazy stuff like a fully reusable grand tour of the Real Solar System using only stock parts, has also expressed an interest in porting Parallax 2.0 to RSS. So this has made me incredibly hopeful that soon we will be seeing this new update across several different planet packs. Back to what's on screen now though, something new that Parallax will bring to the game is picking your landing site well. As I was approaching this large crater on the moon, the ground scatter began to render. All the larger rocks and many of the smaller objects loaded in on the surface have colliders. This means that now when you approach the surface of a planet or a moon, you may want to take a few seconds to really fine-tune your landing site, as I did here by hovering for a few moments and deciding to change my course ever so slightly to the right to avoid the giant section of spiky death on the left of this lander. If I were to land on the collidable terrain, there would be a good chance Jeb and Bob would not be making it back to Kerbin. With the craft now landed, I decided in order to really explore the new collidable terrain, a rover would be a much more sensible option to ram it, carefully drive over some of the new surface features. So I launched a rover. It was sensible after all. During the launch, several of the trees around Kerbin were featured in the background. I do want to point out now that currently the trees do not have colliders. This is because the trees were spawning on runways and alternate launch sites provided by some Kerbal Constructs add-ons. From the bit of time I've spent with the mod though, the Kerbal Space Center has never had an overgrowth problem, and other launch sites and runways in the game, including the island runway, appear to be devoid of any obstructions, so you shouldn't have to worry about crashing into a poorly placed tree if you're flying planes from the stock launch sites. However, if your piloting skills are akin to mine, maybe don't fly too close to the R&D building. Anyway, one major thing I'm very much looking forward to is seeing the community at large designing surface bases and structures around the new terrain. Some of the planets and moons, which are be going over more later, certainly do pose a new interesting challenge with the amount of scatter on the surface. It's certainly no longer just a case of landing somewhere hopefully relatively flat, or if not sliding down a mountain at breakneck speeds. I also imagine some of the more cinematic content creators will have an absolute field day with this new update. In the short time I was playing around with the mod, I was having a blast getting some shots of my craft in rather precarious positions. My screenshots folder has never been more full, and all in just makes the entire game feel so much more alive. Regular viewers will know that I rarely touch the stock system, and in fact I have never even done a video in the stock Kerbal system, but this update has really drawn me back, and I might consider doing something, I'm not sure what yet, within the Kerbal system, if people are wanting to watch that of course. Let me know in a comment if that's something you'd like to see. I only say this because I'm having far too much fun with Parallax 2.0, and until it hopefully gets ported over to other planet packs like I previously mentioned, I honestly can't keep myself away from it. It's so much more exciting exploring the surface of celestial bodies now, and honestly, KSP2 has a lot to live up to now that these options are available to us in the first game. With the rover now safely down, and after modifying the save file to fix an unbroken broken wheel, I began the epic journey around this crater by breakdancing with the rover because I forgot to turn the reaction wheel on the lander can down. That was a quick fix though, and with that, it was time to really test out just how much damage these new surface features could do. If you were like me and grabbed this update rather eagerly and didn't check on how to enable the colliders on the surface scatter, worry not, it's a simple fix. All you need to do is go into the config folder within the Parallax folder in your game data, open up the Parallax global.cfg file, navigate to enable collisions, and change false to true. Be aware that this is currently experimental and may not always work as intended. However, to this point, I've personally not run into any issues with it. What I was having trouble with though was navigating a path through these rocky outcrops, with every small obstacle being a potential disaster. There really is something quite breathtaking about watching the wheels of this rover and any rover that I trialed out with this mod traversing over these new features. Good suspension is now a must if you want to be getting out of any sticky situations you may end up in. Speaking of, that's exactly what I wanted to do right now. I drove Jeb up the side of the crater and decided to have him fling the vehicle off the edge, for scientific reasons of course, and absolutely not because the solar panel on top of the rover was preventing him from leaving. On the way down, the terrain loading in was a little buggy. I mostly attributed this to the speeds that I was moving, along with the spin on the vessel from hitting several rocks on the way down. Despite the visual glitches, wherever the vehicle hit one of the new terrain scatters, it had a solid collider, which of course put this vehicle into more of an uncontrollable state. The more moon rocks it bonked on its journey back to the center of the crater. The rover did however eventually stop, but that pesky solar panel was still preventing Jebediah Kerbin from leaving. There was still plenty of sharp, pointy objects and daring maneuvers Jeb could pull in order to free himself from his temporary prison. So once again, I activated the rover's breakdance mode by turning up the reaction wheel's power and skated across the surface of the moon as majestically as a 2-ton Munar rover could, almost playing pinball with the surface scatter the way the vessel was bouncing from rock to rock. Rovers in this mod are definitely a hell of a lot more interesting to drive. Not that you could really call this driving as per se, but I always found them one of the most tedious aspects of Kerbal Space Program. Parallax 2.0 has completely changed that now. It's amazing what a few bits of surface features really add to the game. Lynx has optimized Parallax to run pretty great too, and it shouldn't require a NASA supercomputer in order to run. In fact, he even states that Parallax should run fairly well on a GT 960M or better. Full system requirements for the mod can also be found on the Kerbal Space Program forum site if you're curious to see whether you can run this. The updated textures of the moon also look fantastic from space, as can be seen here, and this shot really made me think of the opening of the KSP2 trailer, although the craft in that was a tad larger if I recall correctly. Parallax does come included with new surface textures for both the moon and Duna, which means up close they both look fantastic. Those on top of the new surface features definitely make them worth exploring, which I definitely want to do at a later point. But now this Munar mission is coming to its close. As the Mark III command pod returns to the surface, more of the flora included in the update can be seen in the background, which I'll look into a little more in the next section of this video, where I'll be having a brief look at the surfaces of all the different planets and moons in order from Kerbal, starting with Moho, to see how they look in this new update. Moho is honestly one of the most treacherous and difficult planets to now maneuver, with the entire surface covered with hexagonal basaltic formations, so if you ever fancied visiting the Space Giant's Causeway, you've now got your chance. Luckily for me, the Crater Crawler, the craft I used for exploring all of these planets and moons, had powerful vernier thrusters mounted to the bottom, otherwise there was no way I was getting around at all. Beautiful planet, but maybe don't bring a rover. Eve is even more mystical than ever before. Travelling the surface, gigantic bubbles float in the dense, soupy atmosphere, and hardy foliage litters the ground, making spotting any obstacles a nightmarish task. But obviously, if you're up for the challenge of sending Kerbals to Eve's surface, what's a little ground scatter going to do to stop you? I didn't have the chance to check the oceans, but if they're anything like Kerbin's, I'm sure there's more exciting discoveries to be had under the waves. Gilly is still very much a space potato. I'm not even sure if anything has been changed with the new Parallax update. The only scatter on the surface appears to be from breaking ground. Maybe I should have explored more, but this one you can probably give a miss for now. Home of the Kerbal race are now complete with majestic forests, windswept desert plains, and foreboding icebergs. I know a reasonable amount of people who play this game never even leave the Kerbin system, and with all the changes Parallax has made, I could certainly see myself spending an awful lot of time here. The forests are incredible, the shadows cascading from the leaves of the trees onto your vessel as you pass under the canopy is truly a sight to behold. The deserts look stunning with the new cactus and prairie grass littering the landscape, and the tundra and ice caps with the surface scatter are bleak but still definitely worth a visit. The oceans have had a major overhaul with giant kelp forests barely visible from the surface, so maybe a deep sea adventure is on the cards. Kerbin, you'll never want to leave, till of course Jeb gets bored again. Having showcased a lot of the moon in the previous part of this video, there's really not an awful lot more to add. The new surface textures are amazing, and the rocky Munar surface is quite manageable to navigate. Jebstown base, anyone? I landed on the flats of Minmus, and they were still flat. Once again, didn't find an awful lot different with Kerbin's second moon. However, in order to get this video out in reasonable time, I didn't explore all that much, and the flats and slopes were the only biomes I got within reasonable distance to. Base building should be as easy as ever, no need to worry about where you'll be getting your interplanetary fuel from. Duna was always one of my favourite destinations in the stock system, now make that doubly so. The cracks and crevasses of the hills and mountains, whilst treacherous, are certainly a lot of fun to navigate. The flat dunes have small outcroppings piercing the surface, making landing sites few and far between. The two ice caps do seem to be mostly void of any major surface scatter, however, so between that and the potential for mining water there, if you have a mod for that, would probably make those quite a good location for a permanent presence on the red planet. The opportunity to satisfy your curiosity is really present now, and with enough perseverance, you could even circumnavigate the entirety of Duna, and have a grand sightseeing tour doing so. Mars rover puns aside, I certainly did thoroughly enjoy my time spent driving a small autonomous rover over the surface, and I would highly recommend. Much like Moho, Ike is a scarred landscape of incredibly dangerous terrain. Giant red crystals pierce the ground, providing a stark contrast to the dark grey of the moon's surface and the lighter grey of the surface scatter. Moving anything on the surface is barred by seemingly endless razor-sharp rocks, so once again, a rover might not be the smartest of ideas. Parallax for the most part worked seamlessly on my PC, however at Ike I did experience a bit of lag. The density of the terrain scatter here seems much greater than any other celestial body. Still definitely worth checking out, especially for some of the awesome shots of Duna in the distance. What even is a Dres? Does it exist? Does anyone even go there? You may want to change your mind on this small, unassuming planet, as the update to the surface with Parallax has really breathed new life into the location. The canyon seems to be mostly unchanged, however I didn't journey to the bottom, but the areas surrounding it and the overall terrain in general is quite beautiful. Once again, great quantities of scatter cover the surface, with some larger rocks piercing through these smaller clusters. Despite the large amount of surface features, frames here were surprisingly good. You'll almost forget it never even existed. Onto the moons of Jewel now, and starting with a popular destination due to some stunning visuals of the gas giant in the skies and the fact that the atmosphere can support jet engines, Laythe is as interesting as ever. With flora covering the small islands dotted around the moon, giant mushrooms sprout from the ground, providing more flavour to an already interesting backdrop. Glacial shelves are present along the shorelines, providing a nice flat surface to land upon. However, be careful where you tread, as some of that ice may not be entirely stable. The light blue shimmer of this moon is quite mesmerising, and when you approach the surface, be sure to avoid the giant ice shards sprouting from the ground. There's plenty of space here amongst the shards and clusters of broken ice to land and build, and the light reflecting from Kerbin on the pristine icy rocks is a real treat. Just maybe don't leave a crew here for too long to bathe in the radiation from Jewel's belt. I explored several different biomes of Tylo and found very little that had changed. Everything seemed to be as it was before. I did check the configs for Parallax while landed here, and there are definitely models for the moon, so maybe a little bit more exploration was required to find some more interesting features. I'll leave that for you to discover though. Another space potato, Bop certainly has more interesting terrain than Gilly, mostly comprised of large brown clusters of rock. Driving around though proved to be quite difficult, not due to the presence of surface features, but entirely from the gravity, or lack of the situation. Not all planets and moons are beautiful, some are quite ugly, and Pole falls into this category. The green protrusions located all over the surface of this moon give it an almost infected look. Maybe it should seek some medical attention. No smaller ground scatter means that moving around is somewhat achievable. However, the sheer amount of plague pustules that cover the ground make it less than ideal to do so. The furthest planet from Kerbin, at least with just the stock planets installed. Eeloo's terrain is very much akin to Vall's, only really lacking the giant shards of ice of that moon. The scatter appears to drop off considerably in the lower altitudes, so making a large surface base there is entirely achievable. Even at the higher altitudes, it is still entirely manageable to move around, as despite a reasonable amount of clutter, there is plenty of space to maneuver. And that's it for all the celestial bodies. Since starting making this video, Ballistic Fox has notified me that they have made a hotfix for Beyond Home for the new Parallax update. However, it will still be some time before any scatters are available for the planet pack. And with that last note, that will be the end of this video, a little different from what I've done before, but as mentioned, I just couldn't stay away from this mod with how bonkers it is. I'd like to thank my patrons and supporters for their generous donations and allowing me to continue creating these videos, and until the next one, I have been Karnasa, and I will see you later.